Welcome to the Principal's Perspective, where we explore what it really takes to lead a school and why great leadership is a way of being and a set of skills that can be learned. I'm Dr. Adrian Camm.
And I'm Teagan Collins. Whether you're leading a school, an organisation, or preparing for your next leadership move, we're here to break down the strategies, challenges, and real life moments that define leadership today.
This podcast is your guide to navigating leadership with clarity, confidence, and impact.
Let's get into today's episode.
So here we are for another episode, Teagan.
Looking forward to our conversation today about the future of AI.
AI in schools and AI in the principal's office. Should be a good one.
Be fantastic. It's timely, really, given that we have not long returned from the Australian Education Awards and also been featured on the ABC report. Well, you were featured on the ABC report and on ABC Radio, I believe. We'll talk about Australian Education Awards first because we came home with some incredible awards.
It's been a busy few weeks and yes, we did. And it's great recognition for our school and for the team here in terms of the collective work we do together. So we came home with 3 national awards: Innovation in Curriculum Design, Australian School Principal of the Year, and Australian School Principal of the Year non-government, which is very humbling to receive.
You've been talking about how it's taking you some time to process it because it is incredible recognition of the work that you do. And I know you keep deferring it to the team, but it is an individual accolade. And I know we couldn't do it without the team and you couldn't do it without the team, but you do need to pause and revel in it a little bit, or I'm going to force you to do it right now. But I know you've talked about how it is a little bit overwhelming and it's taking you some time to process it. But what does it mean to you?
It means a great deal. It still hasn't sunk in. I am still processing it, what just happened. But it was great to have the team there to celebrate the occasion. And I work really hard, and so do others. But it's a really proud moment for me to think about all the things that I've done in my career that it's led up to this moment. And the sacrifices you make, the mistakes you make, the learnings you have along the way, and the time and energy that you invest into your career to try and be the best that you can possibly be. And to be acknowledged in the way that I've just been acknowledged is amazing. But I will celebrate. I will celebrate at some point, and I will take a moment to really let it sink in, but it's just taking its time.
And we talked about a list of principals that have won that award over the past 10, 15 years. And I know we've talked about how we view those principals as best in class and the work that they've done is admirable and how we aspire to be like them when we grow up. But now you're part of that group. How does that feel?
Surreal, actually, but a real honour. And I've just started connecting with a few of those previous winners as well, who I've looked up to and admired for a long time. And it'll be great to establish a strong relationship and connection with them and to learn from them and to share ideas. It's a huge honour and a real privilege. But it's been a big few weeks in the school because we're also featured on the ABC 7:30 report for our work in AI. And so we had the film crew here for a couple of days, filming some work happening with our students in our AI Academy, interviewing some teachers, and spending some time with me. And in particular, they were really interested in some of the work we were doing around AI avatars, which I know we'll get to throughout this episode.
And we might provide the link in the show notes to anyone who's interested in looking at the section from the 7:30 report. It's always interesting doing media. We talk about managing media, and we've talked about this in previous episodes as well. I know it was a fear of ours of how are they going to cut it up or how will it be represented, but it really has showcased the incredible work that we're doing here and the importance of how we lead in this space for our young people.
Absolutely. And it's generated a lot of buzz in the media. So this morning I was on a different radio show being interviewed about some of the work. The ABC segment on the 7:30 report was picked up by the BBC World Service in the UK and they wanted me to appear on the radio at some ungodly hour so that it fit in with their schedule. It's definitely opening a conversation around AI and digital. And I guess where we started with AI was quite a few years ago now when we developed collaboratively with our community our digital strategy. And that first iteration of our digital strategy was very much around wanting to position our school at the forefront of digital. And it had a variety of different focus areas, and one of those was AI. And that continues to be a focus of ours in that digital space to this day.
And it is an area of your expertise. I'm sure our listeners would be interested to understand, how did you form this awareness and this knowledge? How have you come to understand what you understand, and why do you believe and drive it so much in the life of our school?
I think as a young person, I was heavily interested in science fiction, and that continues to this day. However, what we understand from science fiction is that science fiction ultimately becomes science fact. We're only limited by our imaginations. And so if we look back to prominent thinkers and writers, authors, filmmakers in that science fiction sphere, inevitably, most of the time, what they come up with comes true if your time frame is long enough. And so that's really always captured my imagination. And then through university, I was heavily involved in technology, and I've just kept an eye on that as a passion of mine throughout my entire career. I'm really interested, I'm intrigued by the way technology can influence the world and how it changes things. And there are so many examples over the last 100 years of how we've advanced as a species because of the technology advancements of the day. So fast forward to the last few years, there was a real opportunity here at Westbourne for us to advance our capabilities and our capacities in the digital space. And so I wanted to engage our community very early on in the piece to elicit their expertise, because we've got some incredible people here in the community, parents who are CTOs and CEOs of large organisations, and to get their input into what should the future of digital look like here at the school. And so through that collaborative and consultative process, we developed that strategy. We went through the implementation of that in record time. It was a 3-year strategy which we implemented in less than 2 years. So then we quickly launched into the second iteration of that to further cement our position at the forefront of digital in the independent school sector. And so that strategy now is underway, and it is centred around 5 themes. And the 5 themes are horizon scanning, digital pedagogies, our operational ecosystem, a virtual village, and of course, artificial intelligence. And so the focus on artificial intelligence is really central to the future of our school, because AI is here to stay. Our young people will be entering a world that will be driven and influenced by AI in ways that we can't even imagine yet, because we're only really just getting started, and it's equally exciting and equally scary, I think, for some.
I think it's important to centre the discussion in the digital strategy, as you have given that the background of how we got here with AI. Yes, it's an area of expertise of yours, but it's not just something that we thought, oh, great, let's start with this program, or by introducing the AI Academy. It's grounded in the strategy around the why and why we're doing it. So why do you think, for principals or for school leaders, why do you think it's something that we need to continue driving?
The young people of tomorrow, today's students, are going to be at a disadvantage if they don't understand how to safely, effectively, and ethically use the technologies of today and tomorrow at their disposal. Now, we have a philosophy here that we don't want young people to just be consumers of technology. We do want them to be the creators of tomorrow's technology, and we want them to do it today. And that drives a lot of the programming, a lot of the thinking, a lot of the curriculum, and a lot of the agency that we invite our young people to have. Now, that's going to be central to them succeeding in the future. But what is absolutely clear in my mind is that AI, artificial intelligence, can augment human intelligence. So we're going to have an IA, or an intelligent assistant, basically at our disposal, in our pockets, to assist us with whatever tasks, whatever projects, whatever we're doing or thinking. And that IA is going to be far superior to even our own intellect. Some people are suggesting that in 2027, so what are we? 2 years away, we're going to have artificial general intelligence. So at the moment, people think about AI, if we talk about just the general population, people think about AI in terms of ChatGPT, perhaps, a large language model which can provide text responses to your queries. We're going to soon far surpass that. Things that are emerging every day now is actually quite scary to see how quickly things are evolving. So within 2 years, most are predicting we'll have artificial general intelligence, which means an AI that will be good at everything, not just a very specific field. And we have to remember, AI has been around since 1960. And typically AI was very, very good at one specific thing: chess or poker or playing Pong or the AI was trained for a very specific purpose and it became very, very good at that one purpose.
It wasn't agile.
Right. But now with AGI, we're going to have this intelligence, this entity that is good at everything and almost better than humans at everything. And that's why people get so scared about this. So what does that mean for us as a school? What does it mean for the young people of today? What does it mean for teachers? What does it mean for society? And no one knows the answer to that. We're grappling with those questions right now. But for me, the reason I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there, that is why schools must be leading the conversation with young people around AI. And it must be more than just using the tools that other people create. It must be about understanding fundamentally the technology from the inside. Because if you understand the technology from the inside, you do have agency over the machine or the technologies at your disposal. And that means that you'll be well placed in the future to be the creators of tomorrow's technology. I think it's a fascinating time to be alive. I think it's a fascinating time to be in schools. But that's not to say we haven't been here before. So AI is the current flavour of the day. But at least in my lifetime, the same conversations were happening when we were looking at things like search engines. I'm old enough, Teagan, perhaps a little bit older than you, to remember when Alta Vista was the search engine of the day. And I was around when Google was just released. And it was a big thing, trust me, it was a big thing. But the conversations for the next 10 years in education circles were, well, why do we need to remember facts when we've got Google at our fingertips? Now we know that's nonsense. Of course, we need a base level knowledge and understanding to enable us to think critically and to navigate our way through the world. Prior to that, there were other examples. We think about the technologies now that have transformed our lives that we take for granted. We all have a GPS. Now, I don't know about you. I can't navigate to a destination now without a GPS, can you?
I could not use a Melways at the time when I was learning to drive, and I still cannot use one today.
Right. Once again, I'm old enough to remember a world without mobile phones. You used to have
That's scary.
I know. You used to have to remember people's phone numbers. I can't even remember my own wife's phone number now.
We'll work on that, don't worry.
But I'm sure our listeners would have a similar experience. And so this whole conversation around, well, AI is just making us dumber.
Lazy learners.
That's
a key question in this, is that does AI create lazy learners?
And my response to that would be, if we let it. But what it does do is it changes the nature of learning. I don't think it makes us lazy learners. Of course, there will be a subset of society that uses AI to take the easy route, to take the easy path, to outsource their learning and their thinking. And of course, that is going to have a huge impact on their cognitive capacity, and probably over a long period of time will lead to some decline in their ability to learn and think. But if you're using the technology in the way that I described before, you're using it as an intelligent assistant. I think what you're doing is you're making the simple things simple and you're enabling complexity to emerge. But that's why schools have to lead the conversation, because if schools aren't leading this conversation, who is? So it's up to us, I think, as educators, as teachers, to be weaving this conversation through our work with young people to make sure that they understand how it can be used for good, but also the challenges if they overuse it and what that might mean for them in the future.
And that's the learning process which we're all experiencing at the moment, is how do we rework, rewrite, reimagine curriculum assessment to not future-proof it, because it's not possible, but to ensure that we are increasing that cognitive capacity, or we're taking away the administrivia of teaching and learning and focusing on how do we expand student thinking, how do we grow problem solving, how do we rework this assessment task so that it can't be put into ChatGPT and we're challenging students' thinking constantly with agency, with some tasks that we may say, of course, use ChatGPT or use something within your capacity to be able to assist you to get an even better outcome. But it's that understanding as to why.
It's the understanding as to why, and it's like anything, it has to be balanced. We still fundamentally believe children need to read and write and be literate and numerate, and that hasn't changed, and it won't change.
And that didn't change, as you talked about some of the early interventions or early advancements in technology. That didn't change when we had voice to text, or that didn't change when we had spell check on Word.
No.
We still have to learn how to spell.
100%. But perhaps the purists or the traditionalists would say, yes, spell check was an early plagiarism device. And then we've outsourced spelling. And so that, and then, of course, drawing the correlation, even though, what's the saying? Correlation doesn't equal causation. That, that's why kids can't spell these days. Well, maybe they can't. But what if they increased? What if they gained instead of that? So it's balancing the pros and the cons and the strengths and the weaknesses as we move forward, because as humans, we evolve. New words are being included in the dictionary every year. Things change and things evolve. And so we have to look through that lens, I think, and move into a more sophisticated conversation, particularly in schools, and move beyond this idea of plagiarism and cheating, which I think we largely have in many ways, particularly here at our school. And using the technology to create better learners. And for me, a student who is in an English class writing an essay, hopefully they're able to use AI in ways guided by their teacher to enable them to become better writers, because they can analyze different styles of writing. They can analyze complex thought, arguments. They can compare and contrast. They can synthesize. They can look at different perspectives and angles. And at the very least, they can look at how AI pieces together an essay in terms of its structure, and then break that down into even sentence structure. And by doing that, aren't they becoming better English students? I would have thought.
And because they have the inherent understanding as to how it's developed, the biases that exist behind what is being presented to them, they can analyse that critically. That's an important piece of the puzzle too. But yes, I would say they are becoming better learners with increased capacity at their fingertips.
Yeah.
They're adding AI into their learning toolkit outside of needing to email their teacher or ask a question. We have subject-specific chatbots or AI agents, AI avatars as you've created. I'm interested to get into that in a minute. But they have different tools at their fingertips. And I know we're not the only school in this discussion, which is an interesting conversation. I'm interested to understand the Dr. Adrian Camm avatar that sits on our website. Talk to me about how and why you decided that's what I'd like to do.
So it was about 2 years ago now, Teagan, I think, or perhaps even a little bit longer, when the world was abuzz with AI due to OpenAI and ChatGPT, and everyone was talking about it. And anyway, I was fortunate enough to connect with a small entrepreneurial startup based in the US who was exploring AI in different ways. And one of those ways was to create a digital replica or a digital twin or an AI avatar that looks like you, sounds like you, but can respond in real time to people's queries and can do so in one of over 100 different languages. And so I developed that partnership with that startup and then supported beautifully by some of the staff here at the school. We really started exploring what that might look like. Now, for our listeners, if you still can't get your head around what that looks like, you can almost visualize a video game character or a cartoon character that looks identical to you and can respond in real time. So that's what we're talking about here. And can respond to text, but it can also respond to voice. So it's basically a version of you, a digital version of you, otherwise known in some circles as a deepfake. But deepfake have this negative connotation, and rightly so, because oftentimes people will create a deepfake of someone else in order to ruin their reputation or to try and solicit a cybersecurity attack or to try and get them to give them money or whatever reason they're creating a deepfake for. And we see these across media all the time. So some have said, well, Adrian, you've created a deepfake of yourself. And that was part of the ABC 730 report. And in many ways, yeah, we have. But it goes beyond that. It creates new opportunities for me to scale my impact. I'm one person, but my digital replica can serve hundreds of people all at once. It can respond to queries, and it can do so 24/7. And so it meets people at their point of need. And most importantly, for our multicultural and diverse community, it meets people at their point of need in their native language, which is amazing,
I remember traveling with you, and we were on a recruitment trip. I can't remember the exact city that we were in. And we used your digital twin to speak in the native language of those families that were sitting at our table, real-time translation.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the first examples of how we were using it and trialing it. And the response was incredible. They felt seen, they felt heard, they were excited. Their responses were, we have never been able to have this type of conversation with a school leader, and we've been deciding what school we'd like to send our child to. And if we're having this experience, then we can only imagine what experience our child would have.
Yeah.
And I know we were talking about the ethical connotations. Do people know it's a digital twin? How much of a disclaimer do we need to provide to say, well, they know that it's not actually you on the other end,
Right.
which sounds naive, but we do need to think about everybody's appetite or readiness or awareness of this space, this space.
Yeah.
So I think that those early conversations, to see how we've progressed and to have it sitting on the website, I just want to clue back into something you were talking about earlier. There's only one you. How have you found this has changed your practice or the types of responses or queries that your office may receive?
It's definitely had an impact in terms of the more mundane or routine questions that people might have are now being answered by the AI avatar. So where once upon a time I might have fielded an influx of questions related to tuition fees or the teaching and learning philosophy of the school or the history of the school or what have you, those are now being serviced by the AI avatar. And as of last month, I think the AI avatar is responding to around 2,500 queries a month. So it's getting used a lot. So that's been one advantage. But I guess some of the negative or less than positive feedback we've had, which has been delivered in a really nice and kind way, was, oh, yes, Adrian, this is great. It's a fantastic showcase of what technologies are capable of, but it's not going to replace the real you. And my response to that is, of course it's not. And I'm going to be here and I still really value face-to-face human interaction, and I will for the rest of my time as a principal. But I can't be in all places at all times. I can't be all things to all people. And so this is just another way of providing accessibility or visibility to the role of the principal.
Let's talk about some other AI examples at Westbourne outside of our AI avatars.
Oh, there's so many. Some of the work that really inspires me is the work that's being done by teachers and students. I love, for instance, the work being done by some of our teachers creating real-time language translation in their classes for their English as additional language learners. So what that looks like is the teacher might be up the front delivering a traditional class in whatever subject that is. And let's say I'm an international student, I come from China, I've only been in the country 6 months, I'm still learning English. So what's actually happening then is they'll have their laptop in front of them. And as the teacher is speaking in English, it's being translated in real time in Chinese or Mandarin onto that student's screen. So not only can they hear English, they can see it written in their native language. And the early results from that is that that's substantially and very quickly improving their English language acquisition, which is exciting. And that technology is not wildly innovative. That technology is available for everybody right now. And it's got a really low entry level. And it's something that I think schools should be really considering as part of their EAL program. Other examples include some of the work done by our students using large data sets to engage in machine learning for developing their own AI so that that AI can identify a particular object amongst a range of different objects. That's what we talk about when we talk about creating students who are the creators of tomorrow's technology, not just being passive consumers. That student's learning some really sophisticated concepts in relation to mathematics and physics, and even down into data science and computer science, neural networks. And they're doing it for a purpose and in a context. And so even though they might be 13 or 14 or 15 years old, they're engaging in concepts that some might not have traditionally accessed until fourth year undergraduate university. So it's amazing. And the list goes on. students using AI drones to identify heat maps in particular geographic locations to simulate the identification of missing persons. I could keep going, Teagan, but I might stop there.
The one that I heard about most recently, which I'm really interested in, is the work that's happening down. We've got a wetlands area on site, and we've got a group of students through the AI Drone Academy that are mapping the evolution of those wetlands over time, and also tracing the different native species that we have, which is all being driven by them. They're connecting it now into their environmental science work, and just to see the connection that's formed for particularly our staff and students on site here that have a passion in that area. So we've got VCE students studying environmental science. We've got junior school students who are part of the Drone Academy. We've got staff who love drones and are invested in that technology, all coming together, who came into executive not so long ago to present on some of their work and findings, and just to see the way that it brings people together out of their traditional silos, which we know can be so evident in schools, is another leverage point.
I think that's a really good point that you make there. And some of the great work that's happening from some of our students isn't specifically tied to our AI Academy. Oftentimes we do get caught up in those silos. AI must happen in AI class. Well, no, we know that that's not true. One of our students who's in year 11 has just been published in a AAA journal, research journal, for her work in using AI models to predict the stock market. Talk about bringing economics to life in the context of new technology. Incredible. Incredible. And so it's really inspiring to see the type of work that's happening across the school, from our youngest learners through to our VCE students. And I think that is justification, or it is acknowledgement of the fact that we are not shying away from this conversation like some schools are. We're heavily invested in it because it's important. And we know, and what we're seeing is that young people are capable of more than we ever thought they could be. And they're learning. They're learning contemporary skills. They're learning things that are going to set them up for their future. And it's really inspiring to see.
We've already talked about the role that AI can play in improving our personal effectiveness, or perhaps completing some administrivia that might sit within our roles. But we haven't talked about a big question, which is, do we think that AI will eventually replace our profession?
Good question. I think it's got a simple answer, and that answer is no. It's the same argument about the jobs of the future, right? And throughout history, every time there's been a new technology that's disrupted the status quo, there's always been this fear that all the jobs are going to disappear. Well, that's not entirely true. Some jobs will disappear and some new jobs will be created. But we'll maintain probably the same amount of jobs for the number of people that we have on the planet. So I don't think anytime soon we're all going to be sitting by the beach sipping cocktails and not having to worry about work. That's just not going to happen. But what it will do is it will fundamentally change some jobs as well. And jobs will become less routine, they'll become less ordinary, and they'll require people to do things in different ways. One of the things I'm really interested in at the moment is in marketing, in schools, in businesses, and particularly with the launch of AI agents. Now, AI agents are the next evolution of AI that is gaining a lot of attention. And so let's take the role of a head of marketing. Typically in a school, a head of marketing would have a team that reports to them to do the role of the marketing function, which is all about brand identity, reputation management, selling the story, and telling the good news, if you like, in order to either, in school context, increase enrolments or maintain enrolments, in a business context to potentially lead to more sales. That's going to change with AI, and particularly with AI agents. I think you're going to see teams being much smaller in the coming years, and you're going to see the head of marketing role being more of a conductor of this fleet of autonomous AI agents doing the roles that people typically did before. Now, that's a really interesting future, and it's probably only 12 to 24 months away, I would have thought. So the role of the head of marketing is still going to be there. The nature and scope of that role is going to change. So it's a really interesting time, I think. But no, the simple answer to your question, Teagan, is teachers are not going to be replaced anytime soon.
So we've talked about how the digital strategy has led to a lot of this innovation, particularly around artificial intelligence. And we've also talked about how we're implementing some of these deliverables to improve our operational effectiveness as a school. And that's led to the implementation and development of dashboards across multiple functions. And we're thinking about how we can make sure that we're assisting our teachers to have the information at their fingertips to be able to make decisions in the classroom for their students, for their faculties. And it's all about having the data at our fingertips to be able to make good decisions. But artificial intelligence is central to the way that they operate. And I know that this was a brainchild of yours, thinking, how can we create these dashboards to improve our effectiveness? What for you has been the highlight of seeing those come to fruition?
I think what it's given us is an ability to make better, faster and more informed decisions right across the school. Now that extends to teaching and learning, but also the business operations. And it's giving us insights that we never had before. So that's a really interesting space for us to be as a not-for-profit business, because we have more data now and deeper analysis that we can use to strategically plan for the future. Some people think that I'm data-driven, and those that know me, Teagan, and I'm sure you will agree to this, is I'm not. In fact, I would prefer qualitative data over quantitative data, and that was my research methodology in my PhD actually. But I like to think that as a school, we're not data-driven, but we're data-informed. And so having these sorts of dashboards, having these sorts of visualizations, and then utilizing AI to analyze these data sets to respond to the queries that we may be asking of the data opens up a new world of possibility. And when we talk about the jobs of the future, once upon a time in schools or in businesses, you would have a data analyst who you could ask or task to go away and look at the data and make some predictions and come back with a report for you. Well, now AI can do that, and it can do that on the fly, and it can respond to queries almost instantly. So I think it's an exciting time for schools to consider how their data is being used, how it's being visualized, what analysis they're doing with their data, and then how that is informing their school and their decision making in different ways. But once again, it takes time. So it is about resourcing, and there is a significant financial investment required to be able to set this up so that you can use it the way that you'd like to use it.
For some of our listeners, they may be right along this journey with us in their schools or workplaces, sectors, or even in their families. But for those who haven't quite embraced AI, perhaps to this extent or to any extent, what advice would you give them?
I understand the fear. I understand the anxiety. I understand not knowing and being unsure. And I understand the challenge that a tool like AI can present to people's identity or to a school's identity. But I think that the advice that I would give is that AI is perhaps the most disruptive and transformational tool that we'll see in our lifetimes, and it is absolutely here to stay. And so that you have to start looking at this seriously, and you have to start looking at it through the lens of the student experience, because our young people will be entering a world largely driven or governed by AI. And so how are we as schools equipping them with the mindsets and the attitudes and the skill to be able to navigate that world in safe, effective and ethical ways? So that'd be my advice.
It's a good reminder too, in terms of people that may be apprehensive, or other perhaps educational leaders that may be thinking we couldn't do that here, or that wouldn't work in our context or our setting. I get comments a lot that, it seems as though Westbourne's not a very conservative school. And that's an interesting comment for me to receive, because we all know that there are people within our team who do wear the conservative hat, and I can be one of them. And we challenge each other on our thinking, and whilst one might be pushing ahead, one may be pulling back. We always seem to land in the right space. But something that when we have that conservative hat, or perhaps it's even just the making informed decisions hat, is the governance frameworks that surround these types of decisions that we've made.
I think there's always a tension between innovation and policy. And oftentimes people are scared to push ahead of policy for fear of making a mistake or getting in trouble. But oftentimes policy will lag innovation. We've been thankful that we've been engaged in this work for going on 3 years now. And so whilst that race between innovation and policy continues to exist, we do have some really robust policies in place that do cover everything, as you rightfully pointed out. Assessment, teacher AI use policy, a responsible use policy, right through to a AI governance framework that we've just had the board sign off on that gives us as an executive team some assurances that when we're making decisions around AI technologies, whatever that may be, that we are aligned with the board in terms of the overall governance, and we're acting in the best interests of the school, the staff and the students at all times. We're taking ethics and morals very seriously, data and privacy very seriously, and we're making sure that whatever we do is age appropriate for the young people in our care. Now, all this is really, really important because some might see us as quite innovative and less conservative, but we're not madly or wildly progressive in terms of we're just out here gung-ho doing things without thinking through things very carefully. We're covering all our bases. Yes, we'd like to innovate. Yes, we like to push the boundaries, but we do so appropriately, given that our main job is to make sure that our children are safe and educated well.
I remember it would have been going on 3 years ago, and I was sitting in a network meeting of like-minded and wise deputies at the time, and I was talking through our AI guidelines as an example, and the looks around the room of, I can't believe you're allowing your teachers to do that, and what if this or what if that, and all of the scenario planning. And I was talking through, okay, well, if that happens, this is how we would approach it. And it may not be fully formed, that's at that stage. And remember the conversations we'd had around, we want a really brief one-pager. How can teachers and students use AI if they'd like to? And we know it's happening. So let's not bury our head in the sand and pretend as though it's not happening.
And you hit a great point there, Teagan. They refer to that as shadow AI use in schools or organisations, where perhaps the school or the organisation doesn't have a specific stance in relation to policy, but that doesn't matter. It's not stopping people from using it. And so you have to be realistic and you have to approach your school or your organisation in a transparent way. Now, we do encourage the responsible and appropriate use of AI, but as you'll know, I think sometimes lazy use of AI is really, really noticeable. And I'll pull people up all the time and say, well, you've just copy and pasted that from ChatGPT. Now, for this particular context and for this particular audience, that's not okay. I expect better. and so we need to continue having those conversations with people along the way to make sure that they understand when it's not appropriate to be used. And now, for instance, if a senior executive member is writing a message to their community, now they might want to use AI to perhaps overcome what's known as the cold start problem and actually get some thoughts out there. But the expectation is then that they would refine that. They would put their voice through it. They would make it specific to the audience and have a little bit of care and pride with what they're writing.
I love the phrase you used around the lag between policy and innovation, and it got me thinking around those guidelines that we started off with all those years ago and how that has transformed now into the policy suite of documentation we hold. And perhaps if we hadn't have started in the initial phase with something to go off, and that something was still of really sound quality, it was robust. A lot of those guidelines have stood the test of time, funnily enough, and are still included in our policy documentation to this day. But it's been a really good example of how we can innovate, perhaps without knowing all of the answers, but knowing that we will have the frameworks to be able to support the work that we're doing, and it won't slow down the innovation for red tape's sake. So I think for those who may be apprehensive, our apprehensive listeners or conservative listeners, knowing that we have those conversations too.
100%. And it is oftentimes about educating those around you. So we've been pretty much talking a pro-AI stance here, Teagan, at Westbourne, and that's definitely what we do. We definitely believe in use of AI because it's going to be part of our future. But it's really interesting to talk with some parents who think, oh, everything is now AI. Well, no, it's not. If I was the teacher in my class and I have 20 students walk in with their laptops, the expectation would be you don't open your laptops right now unless you need to. So it's not like it's open slatter and AI is being used everywhere for everything all the time. That's not the case at all. But it is, as you rightly pointed out earlier in our conversation, it's now part of our toolkit. Teagan, I'm really interested in your experiences because I feel as though I've done a lot of the talking in this episode, and it definitely is an area of interest for me. But I'm really interested in your experience. Go back a couple of years, perhaps when ChatGPT was first launched, and then trace your thinking and your practices through to the current day, and perhaps share with our listeners your insights, your feelings, and maybe your use of AI.
Between you and our Director of Digital Learning, Liam Bassett, between the two of you who I'm in conversation with regularly, I've been challenged and not forced is too strong a word, but challenged to think about how we use and why we use AI and the possibilities, because it's not somewhere that I would naturally lean into. If I'm picking up an article or a book, I'm not leaning into this space. So for me, reflecting on that network meeting that I was at, and we were talking about our AI guidelines at the time, probably 6 months prior to that was a lot of conversation between you and Liam and I. What does this look like? How are we embracing this? Overseeing professional learning at the time, we were thinking about what do we need teachers to engage with, or what do we want them to engage with critically, and how do we discourage, I suppose, that shadow use and really call out what we're able to accept or what we want to accept and encourage, or perhaps what we don't want to see, which is the heads of school notification to parents, which you used as an example before, which we haven't seen.
No, we haven't. It was a hypothetical. Yeah.
So reflecting from our conversation today has made me reflect on my growth in this space over the past 3 to 4 years, and in challenging myself to use the technology, to understand it more deeply. And like we encourage our students, is to create and not just be a passive user or passive engager of the technology. And I've been experiencing that firsthand alongside some of our students and the work that they do. And also in my own research and learning with my studies at the moment, and thinking about what ethical ways can I engage with AI as a research assistant with my own research to do some of the administrative work so that I can hold space for the deep thinking work. But then also grappling with a very large institution in the university I'm studying at who have the opposite of a pro-AI stance. So it's an interesting space for me to be in the policy lag from the university level now, perhaps that I'm experiencing, of going, well, actually, I know that I can utilise this to my advantage to not only have stronger, better, faster outcomes, but so that I can make better decisions from my research perspective.
I love that. How about this, right? In universities, if you're a researcher, oftentimes you might have a research assistant, a human research assistant. How's that different from an AI research assistant? You don't have to answer it, just a thought.
It's a good question. And then moving beyond that to how can you use this in your practice to leverage what you do and to be better at what you do. And that's something that I experienced the cold start. That's something that I can struggle with, the writer's block. And we write more than we think we do, whether it be weekly updates, staff communications, parent communications, assembly speeches, event speeches. I could probably count 15 things that I've written this week already. And it is part of our practice, that writing is practice. My supervisors always tell me writing is thinking. But sometimes I do have that cold start. So part of my practice has been to challenge myself through the use of ChatGPT as an example, or through Microsoft Copilot, which we have deployed on our system and at our fingertips, is what am I missing here? Or what could I be talking about that I'm not talking about? Or what's current in the media that I may not have had time to read The Age or the Financial Review this week? What am I missing that could be topical for students? And also challenging our own biases or assumptions. So I've started to use that in my practice, even little things like searching for documents with Copilot and having more accessible information at your fingertips. So there's some of the ways that I've started to bring it into my practice, but I'm certainly not embracing it to its fullest extent.
No, but I love that. You're using it in ways that are specific to you in your role and where you're at this point in time. And searching for documents using Copilot is a game changer when you've got tens of thousands of documents on your system, even if you do have a great file naming convention, I must admit. But what we're seeing now is with AI, just in addition to what you said, and perhaps this is the last point we'll make in this episode, the way people are accessing the internet is changing. And if I reflect on my own use, 3 years ago, 80% of my use of the internet outside of my daily productivity tools like email and Word and those sorts of things, 80% of my use of the internet was through a search engine like Google. And then maybe 20% was through an AI tool, let's say like ChatGPT. If I'm being really honest, that's flipped around now. So I think 80% of my usage is through AI tools where I'm asking questions, putting forward queries and getting responses, and 20% might be through something like Google. That's a fundamental shift in such a short period of time. And I'd be really interested if the listeners of our podcast share a similar experience, because I think that's only going to increase. And so the way we access information on the internet, on the web, is going to change. It's going to continue to change. And I question, what does that mean for things like school websites? Or what does that mean for things like learning management systems? And if I had a crystal ball, that would be great, but I don't. But it would be really interesting to see how it plays out over the next 3 to 5 years.
One to watch.
One to watch.
I think that's a nice place for us to leave it here today. Thanks, Adrian.
Thanks, Teagan. That's a wrap on today's episode of The Principal's Perspective. We hope this conversation gave you practical insights to lead with clarity, confidence, and impact.
Leadership is a continuous journey, and we'd love to keep the conversation going. You can find us on LinkedIn. Just search for Dr. Adrian Camm and Teagan Collins and let us know your thoughts, questions, or leadership wins.
Make sure to follow The Principal's Perspective on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone in your network.
Until next time, keep leading with purpose, and we'll see you in the next episode. You can be sure to find any references, books, or resources we discussed